So, Leke, welcome to the Black and Raw Podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's bro, it's bro. I've noticed anyone that's watching on YouTube that the collection of books that you have behind you. I thought I'd mention it before I started the recording, but I just think that's a nice collection of books you got there.
Thank you. I'm a voracious reader. I like to learn all the time, and you got to keep up.
Definitely. So yeah, so Leke, my audience would have got just a little bit about you, what we're going to be talking about today, but I just wanted to sort of find out from you. I know nothing about gut health. I know it's important. I know people say your gut health is this, your gut health is that. You should know what microbiomes you have in your gut health. Why should we care about gut health?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, well, Hippocrates said, thousands of years ago, all health begins in the gut. So the gut health is so important. The concept of gut health is kind of a new one, really. The term gut health is really about your microbiome, which is your bacteria and viruses and funguses that are present not only in the gut, actually, but also in the mouth and the skin and the vaginal area that really determine our health because they produce vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, and even hormones, for example. So, 80% of serotonin is present in the gut, which is your happy brain chemical. That's why you got a gut-brain axis. You've probably heard of that. So people would have so-called depression. In some cases, the problem is actually coming from the gut. So the gut really controls so many things. You've also got your nervous system in the gut. About 75% of the nervous system is present in the gut.
Oh,
So if you're catching lots of viruses, infections, people always think it's to do with the lungs. But actually, the problem could be a gut issue because your immunity is really present in the gut, or a huge proportion.
I didn't know that at all. That like 75% of your nervous system's in your gut. Um, I that's just a bit of a fascinating stat because I would have never thought because I was like, but we've got so many nerves in our brains, like going up our spine,
Yeah,
like all over our body. So like, how is 75% of it in your gut? So the gut is really important then, by the sounds of it, by everything
very
that's
important.
involved in. And I had no idea that, sometimes with depression that there may be some links to your gut, or even when you catch viruses and stuff, that's where it's all sort of linked to.
Yeah, aches and pains, even bad skin, you can trace it to the gut. So the microorganisms in the gut, they kind of exist in balance, in equilibrium. So you've got the good bacteria, it's called, and the bad bacteria, but they're a lot more than bacteria. You've got fungi, you've got the viruses as well. So when the balance is out of sync, then you start getting problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called dysbiosis. Yes.
Oh, and so for you, how did you sort of realize the importance of having a healthy gut microbiome?
Yes, so I suffered from gut health issues for years. So it really started 25 years ago or so. I started with pins and needles. So I thought, oh gosh, I've got pins and needles. And what do you do? I went to a neurologist because the pins and needles were in my fingers and in my hands. So I thought it was carpal tunnel syndrome, which is a compression of the nerve in your hand, and that can cause pins and needles. So I had something called nerve conduction studies, and those were normal. Then after that, I started getting really tired and it just being off it and brain fog. And I went to see a neurologist and also a blood doctor because I thought maybe there's something wrong with my blood, and they couldn't find anything because they thought, oh, you've got sickle cell traits, but that's not, it wouldn't really cause fatigue. Then that's when I started the real gut issues like bloating, gas, diarrhea, and constipation. It just went on for a long time. Then I saw the best doctors. I saw a gastroenterologist, and I had a camera test, up and down, endoscopy and a sigmoidoscopy, and they couldn't find anything. And they just said, well, go back to your doctor. So I thought, gosh, I'm left on my own because I know my doctor consulted. I went to see you. They're saying, go back to your doctor. But in a way, I just thought, that is it. I'm probably a strange person. I just lived with my symptoms. But then when I started GP training, I started seeing people like me presenting with strange symptoms and just aches and pains, fatigue, bloating, gas. And they would see all these specialists and just come back and have no treatment. So I asked my GP trainer at the time, Richard, Richard, what's wrong with them? I mean, they've seen all these specialists And he just said, yeah, maybe they've got a bit of depression or it's just medically unexplained. But I thought there's got to be something. I mean, it just can't be unexplained. And that's when
Mm.
I started really digging into the whole gut health and I stumbled across functional medicine.
Yeah, so it sounds like, you went through all of the stages and probably a bit above and beyond in being like, okay, is it my nervous system? Is it my blood? And I guess all of that can probably could have been quite frustrating for you because you're like, I've done all of this just for you then to tell me to go back to my GP who doesn't have the expertise in the specific things that I'm looking for. You mentioned
Yes.
functional medicine. And
Mm.
so what did that look like? You went through all of the conventional ways of like, let me try and solve this. And then you were like, actually, maybe something else could really be really helpful.
Yeah. So when I saw all these doctors and nothing worked, I started experimenting, like, just trying things, going into health shops. And I've always been into herbs and supplements, but not to this degree now, as it is now. So I'd go into shops and I'd try different things. And I remember walking into a shop years ago and picked up a powder, it was a prebiotic. And the guy goes, yeah, that's quite good for IBS. Because I thought at the time I thought I just got IBS, it was
Mm.
irritable bowel syndrome, which if you think about it doesn't really make any sense. It just means your tummy is poorly. Irritable bowel syndrome doesn't tell you what the problem is. So I took this powder and I felt better like 2 days after. And I thought, gosh, there's something here. Then I started looking to this company, trying all their supplements and just trying everything. And I changed my diets and I tried every diet on the planet. I haven't tried this one called what's it called? Cabbage soup diet. I
Oh,
tried
wow.
everything and just experimenting all the time. And also I started consulting with other healthcare practitioners like nutritionists, nutritional therapists, and trying different things. And I even saw people in England, in America as well, experts. And with time, started seeing what worked, what didn't work. And then after many years, I realized I have so much knowledge myself. And so I eventually fixed my gut, and that's what I do now, help other people. So yeah. But then actually, to answer your question, I didn't know functional medicine existed. Even though I was applying its principles, I didn't know there was something called functional medicine. There was a lady from a nutritional company who told me, she goes, you should look into functional medicine. I said, what is that? And she told me what it was. And I Googled it. I thought, oh my gosh, this is really fascinating.
Yeah.
But before that, I even contacted different, I would say, courses on nutrition and said, look, I want to study nutrition. And they asked me for my medical studies and all this sort of stuff. Just before I started my nutritional studies, that's when I found functional medicine. And the lady told me, this is going to be a bit more practical for you because you've got a medical degree already and you need more functional medicine. And happy I did that.
Yeah, I was about to say this is the first time I've actually ever heard of functional medicine. And I feel like a lot of, as we were talking before we came on air, you were telling me that you're from Cameroon and I'm from Zimbabwe. And a lot of the things in which our ancestors, in which our families probably practice at home, probably aligns with that functional medicine sort of alternative to what GPs and sort of that, like it's still like a medical or westernized sort of medical view of people. And it's funny that sometimes the things that work are the things that we just be like, oh, we can't explain it, or it's okay, like that's just what people in third world countries do. You know what I mean? We're not going to use that in
Yeah.
our thinking and bringing it all together. So I found that I found that really interesting. Actually, it's just like whenever you're ill and your parents say, have ginger, lemon, and
Yeah.
honey.
Ginger,
And
lemon. Yeah, and
yeah,
honey.
and it works wonders, doesn't it? And you just think, or like steaming, like when COVID was around, my grandma was like, make sure you're steaming, like clearing up everything. And it's like, well, that's not what people are telling us to do, but those things also really do help and really do add value.
Yeah, and in fact, talking about ancient healing modalities, functional medicine is quite unique. It's quite advanced. For example, some of the testing are quite advanced, but then the treatments are quite ancient because ancient wisdom works. So you'd find lots of herbs and various supplements from centuries, which are used in functional medicine, for example.
Do you feel like in terms of the education that you get we'll specifically talk about the UK and
Mm.
like the education you get as a doctor, do you feel like that equips you really enough to then, go out into the world and try and treat things with that sort of certain perspective? Is there in the curriculum space to include alternative methods?
Good question. Well, when I studied, maybe no, but things are changing a bit. There is a charity called NutriTank. I've met two of them, the founders, really great guys, and they're pushing for nutrition to be studied in medical schools because traditionally doctors don't know that much about nutrition, but this is changing. So once we bridge the gap between kind of nutrition and health, then that's going to make a big difference. But yes, the treatment model is also different. I would say conventional doctors are geared towards treating more acute diseases and not chronic disease. So if, for example, you've got pneumonia, you've got antibiotics, you've got a fractured ankle, you've got an orthopedic surgeon, you've got appendicitis, appendix out. That's fascinating. Modern medicine is great and is quite advanced, but it doesn't tackle chronic diseases. For example, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes. We haven't really got the tools. So in a way, there's a difference between the science of health and the science of disease. So conventional medicine is quite good with the science of disease, but not so much the science of maintaining health. So that's a big gap. And that's why, for example, during COVID or after COVID, you have all these patients' strange symptoms, which doctors just don't know what to do because they don't understand the imbalances in the body. So things like functional medicine and ancient traditional healing techniques like traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, they look at the body as being in a state of balance. So anything that tips the body out of balance, they've got to correct it, which is slightly different from the conventional medical model. And also things like functional medicine, you look at the body's different body systems, but then there's quite emphasis on how they're related. I think in conventional medicine, that relationship is not emphasized. So if you've got a problem, with your migraines, you've got a neurologist. If you've got a problem with your tummy, you see a gastroenterologist. If you've got a problem with your joints, see a rheumatologist. But actually, all the body systems work together, and it could be just one thing which is wrong. But the conventional medical doctor might struggle to put the pieces together in some cases. In others, no, but in some cases, yes.
Yeah, I guess there's sort of that trying to actually have a holistic view of the
Yeah, that's the
body
word.
and the self, and rather we have specialisms and how our system, how our education system is ran. It's through specializing. You kind of specialize when you're doing your
Mm,
GCSEs. I remember having a conversation with my mom, and we were talking about my sister and about universities and stuff. I always say in the household that I really prefer the American system, just in terms of how they, when you go to college, you can sort of explore a bit more what you want to do and what you like and what your
mm,
interests are. And I think I've heard people describing it as, in America, it's more breadth than depth, and in England, it's more depth than breadth. And
interesting.
I personally would have preferred that system. I think as growing up, obviously both have their disadvantages, but I do
Mm,
think when we're talking about looking at the body as a whole system, breadth and looking at it holistically probably has a better view. And as you're saying, tackling things such as like obesity, diabetes, there's more to it than just, the health of the body. There's loads of outside factors which aren't
mm.
included and which aren't sort of like we talk about exercise, we talk about, trying to reduce your stress and stress techniques, but then there's not really things to entice that or things to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. They call the soft factors, things like stress reduction, sleep, good quality sleep, and good social interactions is so important. For example, just eating together, having a meal as a family, that's quite a big thing. So Remember the first time I actually went to a traditional Chinese medicine years ago? He asked me, because how is your sleep? And I remember thinking, why is he asking about my sleep for? I mean, who cares about my sleep? I didn't realize at the time how important sleep is. But yeah, so if you're working and you've got a two minute break, eating a sandwich and typing, that's not so good for your gut and your overall health. That's why I think in Europe they do better than us, because they've got breaks and they go home and they go for swimming and have a
Yeah.
meal, then they open in the afternoon. So it's a different pace.
Definitely, yeah. And people like I prefer that. Like I try and make sure that when I'm at work, even if it's like 10, 20 minutes, like, we get an hour's break, but I make sure that I sit down at the table and have my lunch there. And quite a lot of the people are just working through the day,
Mm,
not having that time to have their lunch. And it's just it's those small things which you don't really think about that can actually add a lot to your overall well-being or gut health in terms of what we're discussing.
absolutely.
So I wanted to find out sort of a bit about your book. And it sounds like you've been able to take all of your knowledge, all of your experiences, and be able to put them in a book form. So the book is titled "How to Stay Ahead of Your Doctor and Influence Your Health." Can you just give us a glimpse into what readers can expect, or sort of what you wanted to portray in the book?
Yeah, thank you. So, it took me about 10 years to write this book, believe it or not. It's a long time. I had to kind of narrow it down. So I think the premise of this book is really to empower patients, because most health happens outside the doctor's office. You've got 10 minutes with your GP, or we've got, I don't know how many minutes a consultant. So it's not enough time. So after many years, I realized patients were not getting enough. It just wasn't enough, that interaction between the doctor and the patient. So I thought, how do I empower patients? So I started a book by explaining the basics of how the healthcare system works. It's important to know where to go if you've got a problem, etc. And also how doctors diagnose diseases, how to pick the right doctor for your health, and even explaining how the basic body systems. And there's also a chapter on how to interpret basic blood test results. And the second part of the book explains your gut microbiome, weight loss mistakes. A lot of people got weight problem in England. We all have. So weight loss mistakes, how to eat the right food, and yeah, so we've got a lot more chapters in there. But it's really just to empower patients. So if you read this book, you feel more empowered. You'd know you're more prepared, because going to see a doctor with no knowledge at all is not a good idea. I mean, some doctors don't like patients Googling. I actually like the reverse. I like them to Google. So we've got an idea. If you've
Mm,
got no knowledge at all, you might not get the best care. So it's good to have some knowledge. And that's what
yeah.
this book is trying to provide. Yeah.
And I feel like that's quite brilliant in terms of what you're trying to do because, we all, anyone in England, and I'm sure it's probably quite similar around the world, but just in the UK, our NHS is fantastic. I love it. Like, I've broken my ankle, and even though I had to
Mhm.
wait 2 hours for an ambulance still came to get me. Um,
Yeah.
and even though the times aren't maybe the fastest that you would want, you know, they managed to fix my leg. Um, and I'm really grateful for that. I've dislocated my shoulder, and I was being able to be seen, popped back in, and they're like, gone. And this was I was in a different I was in Nottingham actually. Um,
Mm.
and you're still getting the same service sort of no matter where you are in the country. But we do understand the pressures that are on NHS. We do understand the pressures that are on GPs. So I think being able to empower people to, take agency over their own health and to be able to have that information about their gut microbiome, about, weight loss tips, because there's loads of weight loss hacks and all of this and that. But I think it's
Mm.
really good to be able to have someone, that is a doctor that is talking about it and understands how your body works. So I think that's really, yeah, I really thank you for writing a book like that.
Oh, thank
And
you.
no, it's much appreciated because I think a lot of people do need that. are you able to tell me a bit about the gut health medic?
Right, yeah. So gut health medic, as the name suggests, is really just seeing patients with gut health issues like I had. Bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation, aches and pains, brain fog, feeling tired all the time. These are all chronic symptoms, which are in most cases due to poor gut health. So it's an online service. I normally see patients via Zoom. And remember I said before, all health begins in the gut. So I've also got a tab called Wellness Consultancy, where patients who maybe they're well, but just want to maybe improve their health or achieve optimal health, get a bit more energy maybe, or just function better, they can have a consultation just to sort that out. Or if they've got what maybe bad skin and that's all they have, they can kind of book the gut health consultancy. But the gut health medic main clinic is just people with chronic diseases, gut issues. So I typically see patients with problems maybe 3 months to even 30 years. I've had patients who've had gut issues for 30, 40 years even.
Wow.
So yeah, we kind of do a first consultation, then I request some tests, then second consultation, look over the results. And I tell every patient it's a journey. If you've got a problem for many years, you won't sort it out in two consultations. It'll take many more.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just go as the patient gets better. If they get better, no more consultations. If not, then we review until put the health back in optimal health.
And what does it, is there a difference between working with patients that have experienced gut health for a few days, a few months, than dealing with people that are dealing with gut health for 30 years?
Yeah, I think there's a difference. If it's just a few months, it might be something so basic. They might just be eating the wrong food, or they might have, I don't know, H. pylori. They might have maybe poor sleep. It tends to be something you can change very easily in general. But if you had a problem for many years, then lots of your body systems are out of balance. From your gut, it becomes your mitochondrial energy systems go, your hormonal systems go, your detoxification systems, your liver is not functioning properly. So you've got to do more work. So as we said, the gut functions with every other body system. So when they get out of balance, you need to put everything back into balance. So yeah, the chronic ones, which have lasted many years, are a lot more difficult to manage, but it can be done.
Yeah. No, I guess that's good in terms of giving people hope that have maybe experienced gut health problems for a while and being able just to reassure them that, hey, it's not going to be overnight. Like, but at least you're seeing somebody that not necessarily knows what the problem is, but like, rather than, as you're saying, going through all the hoops which you did when it was your gut health, if you're able to go to
Mm.
somebody who is focusing on gut health and it is that problem, you then don't have to do all of the referrals and going through loops and, you know, having to wait with that uncertainty of not knowing what's going on with your
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, it's important to have a plan. Once you have a plan and a working diagnosis, then things are easier. Yeah, but lots of people just go on Instagram or I don't know, TikTok, get a supplement and then try it for 2 days. I mean, I did that, but you're unlikely going to sort out the problem with one supplement. There's not like this one miracle supplement saying all your problems are going to go now. No, you've got to do lots of stuff, a stepwise approach to eventually heal properly.
Yeah. So I was looking at some of the stuff that you do and saw that you had an online course, which is called the
Yeah,
Optimal Health Prescription Program,
yeah.
which seems to be tailored more towards busy professionals. Like, what sort of made you want to have this sort of program? And I guess, how does it help busy professionals in managing stressful lives?
All right, yeah, good question. So, I was burnt out myself many years ago,
Hmm.
so I know how it feels like. And also, as a GP, I see lots of patients with stress-related issues, excuse me, as well as via gut health medic. Lots of patients are stressed. And I'll tell you a funny story. 2 years ago, my first ever interview for a partnership job, I went to the interview and there was a presentation to do. I did that. And then the second part that says, how do you deal with stress? And I didn't know because I'd never been stressed, or believe it or not, in my life, I'd just never been.
Mm.
So I defined what stress was. And the lady goes, the practice manager, she goes, yes, I know what stress is, but how do you deal with it? She goes, doctors are going around like headless chickens and not knowing what to do. What do you do when you're stressed? And I just looked at her blankly because I just thought, I don't know. So I didn't get the job. So when I called for feedback, yeah, this says, well, you did well, but you didn't answer the question of how you dealt with stress. So I didn't get the job because of stress. Fast forward many years after, I knew what stress was because I was working in a busy practice and had seen like 70 patients in one day and went back home and I crashed my car on the way home
Oh,
because
wow.
my vision just went and it was a nightmare job. So I kind of know what stress is. And when people are stressed, one, they lose energy, brain fog, focus, they feel low. Low libido is a big one. Lots of my patients got low libido. They can't function. Even when they're young, they say, oh man, I can't function. My girlfriend's annoyed me. It's because they're chronically stressed. And also they tend to catch lots of infections. Because when you're stressed, you've got high cortisol in your system, and cortisol causes inflammation. And that can affect your immunity, it can affect your digestion, it can affect your energy levels. So I thought it's important to do a course because I know how bad the problem is. So yeah, the aim of the course is just to really fix these issues. So, libido, catching infections, optimizing immunity, more energy, more focus. That's really important. People want to achieve more. So yeah, it's a really exhaustive course and tells you exactly what to do, what supplements to take, what to eat, and what kind of exercise to do.
Yeah. And you're not in a job interview right now, but how do you deal with stress?
No, that's a good question. Now, I love music. So music, I should have said that in the interview at the time. So I should have got the job at that time. Yeah, so music is really therapeutic. I play instruments as well, so that's really important to set my body into it's called a rest and digest state, or parasympathetic dominance, a more relaxed state. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer. You mentioned that in terms of when you felt stressed, and when you did have that car crash, um, what sort of reflection did you take after that? Like, was it like, oh, damn, that happened because I was stressed, or did it sort of take a bit of time for that to sit in?
Yeah, good question. So that was one of the things that made me leave that job. The other one was my daughter. She was 4 at the time. She would say, "Daddy, do you want to play with us?" And then she says, "No, it's all right. You're tired." She gave me the
Oh,
excuse, but so I know she was 4, and I realized I wasn't doing anything during the weekends. Like, do you want to go for a swim? Oh, no, I'm tired. Do you want to go? I'm tired. Then when I crashed my car and I got home, and I just remember sitting in the drive for 20 minutes, and I just thought to myself, my head buried in the steering wheel like that. And I thought, my goodness, I've got no life. I'm just working and just not enjoying myself at all. Then I thought about my daughter's words when she says, "Are you tired?" And I just thought, that is it. So I went to my study here and I just wrote my resignation letter and I handed it in the next day. That's how bad it was. But it would build, people get stressed for many years. They realize after just one thing triggers them and then they realize it's really bad because people kind of cope. You kind of cope for months and years. You don't realize it until it gets to a certain point. A major event happens, like to me, and then you think, okay, I've got to do something now.
yeah. But it's been
Yeah.
building up this whole time.
Yeah.
And I guess that's also sort of as we're talking about having a holistic approach, is that that stress, you don't even realize sort of the toll that it's taking on every other part
Yeah.
of your health, of your life, your relationships. And kids are great like that, aren't they? Because they just spot things and just sort of say it
Yeah.
honestly. Like an adult might be like, "Oh, you look a bit tired today," or like, "Oh, have you had a long day?" Whereas your kid was like, "Nah, dad doesn't want to play, man. He's too tired." And you're like, "Oh, that hurts. Like, I do want to play, but you're right. I am too tired." Like, and you've noticed that as a 4-year-old.
Yeah, I know, that's so bad.
So no. So wanted to sort of shift gears a little bit. And when I was reading your profile, you talked about sort of being an inventor and sort of creating sort of creating things for like kitchen spaces. Um,
Mm.
I guess you like in music and also playing instruments. that creative side is sort of like showing up in different things. So like what sort of drove that creativity, and what were some of the products that you were making or that you have made?
Yeah, so good question. Yeah, I've got a creative mind. I've always had. I like
Mm.
making things and thinking of stuff. So in a way, medicine is solving problems.
Yeah,
In a
quite
way, it's
creative.
solving
Yeah, it's
some
true.
problems. Yeah, so it was a natural progression. I like cooking, and that's why I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So I thought I'm going to invent something to help, me in the kitchen space. But I've invented things in other spaces, even the medical space, but they just haven't had any traction at all. But yeah, I've invented many things actually. I've got a huge portfolio, but I managed to license one item which eventually fell through. It was a kitchen gadget that helps you seal kitchen packets without bag clips.
Yeah.
So you open up, I don't know, a spice thing and you just slot it in. So signed a deal with an American company, and I thought, wow, so happy. Licensing deal is jumping around the house. And unfortunately, after about 7 months, had a letter back saying they won't proceed with the product anymore. And the reason is the company redesigned the product and made it collapsible.
Oh.
Now, when you do that, then the cost of production changes. So they were hoping to sell the product, I think, for $20, I think. But if they did it collapsible, the price per unit would go higher, and they weren't going to be able to afford to proceed. So I got this email, and I thought, oh no, all my hard work.
Oh.
But yeah, that's what happens with licensing. But I'm still trying. Once in a while, I've
Yeah.
got an idea, draw it out, build a prototype, and then contact companies. It's a long journey, but I think I'll eventually get there.
So it sounds like there's quite a bit of challenges in trying to get licensing, and as you're
Yeah.
saying, sort of that setback in terms of they made it they so like when they changed the design and made it collapsible, you said that
Mm.
made it that they cost more. When you were talking, I was thinking, oh, does that mean like they were like, oh, we found a way to make it cheaper without your design, like we made our own design and we're just going to use that
All
instead,
right. No, no, no.
like.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think companies tend not to do that because they have bad publicity. So everyone's so worried about PR. So
Mm,
it makes sense for them to keep working with because I might come out with something very good in the future. So they have a long-term vision, most companies. So they won't just rip off an inventor. I mean, some
and
do,
yeah.
but most don't. Yeah, some would, but
Especially in the age of Instagram and TikTok, everyone, you could be like, whoa, I've seen that before. Someone else did that. And then this company's ripping them off. And then, yeah, that publicity is quite bad. And it can spread really quickly, can't it,
yeah, yeah,
nowadays?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, if your company is out in the public domain, without before you contacted the company, then that's I think quite dangerous because someone in Beijing could just copy your design and get it on the shelves before before the next day.
yeah. So we've discussed quite a lot of interesting things within this, and you have talked about um your like medicine, and finding a different alternative medicine and music and invention. I guess how does, being a GP, your love for music, your love for inventing, how does that work all together, or does it not, or is it sort of does it just really flow in between all of it?
I think it flows. It helps keep me balanced because the average GP sees about 30 to 40 people a day, patients a day. You've got the admin, you've got other bits of paperwork. So if you only did that, it's really going to drive you crazy, I think. For me, I like doing different things. So I just do gut health medic as well as GP, and then I play music, and then I cook, post it on Instagram or TikTok. So it just helps me still have enthusiasm, really. If not, you get a bit stale and bored and stressed, stressful.
Yeah. I guess it's that thing of and like I remember when I did my interview for a social work job, and they were like, oh, okay, how do you sort of similar, how do you manage your stress? They're like, it's quite a stressful job, quite emotionally taxing. Like, how do you manage self-care? And I was like, well, I try to go gym in the morning, I swim, I play basketball. My guitar is sitting in the corner and is looking at me now with shame because I haven't touched it for a while. But
Oh, you play? Oh, good.
music, yeah, a little bit. I tried to learn during COVID, and I could play a few songs. But like I
Oh,
said, I keep looking over at it because I'm like, I haven't played you for a while. So I need to get back on it. But I think a lot of those, like having different interests, having different strategies. I love to cook as well. Literally before this interview, I was preparing steak. My parents have gone away for the next 2 days, and it's just me and my sister. So and she literally messaged me. She was like, "Can you make me some food?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine." Um, so having all those different interests, definitely when you are stressed, you can then go back and fall on those things and be like, this is going to help me get into that flow state, as you were saying earlier, sort of having like de-stressing you and being able to. So
mm,
yeah, I love going to basketball, and it's really nice to sort of have that interaction, but also have that exercise, and doing all those other alternative things. And it just goes into sort of what the whole conversation sort of been about, is that finding alternative things and having a holistic approach to your health and to yourself is the best way to go.
absolutely. If not, I also do yoga as well as a
Oh,
stress
nice.
relieving thing, and movement. So important, movement. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I do love a bit of yoga. Haven't done it as much lately, but like when you're like, oh, I love doing something, and then you haven't done it for a while. Like I hadn't been for a swim this week. I went last week. But I know when I get back into the pool, I'm gonna feel so great afterwards. Maybe not in between it when I'm like a bit dying between sets, but
Yeah.
like just when you get in the water and it's just, yeah, I want to go for a swim now. I just wanted to ask you two more questions.
Okay.
As we're ending the conversation, you mentioned a bit about cooking, and we've talked about food. For someone who enjoys cooking, what are some of your favorite recipes, like sort of cooking tips, or as you're saying, you changed your diet quite a few times. Like, what were some of the things that you learned from changing diets and cooking?
Good one. Favorite recipes? I'm not sure I've got any because it changes all the time. So I've got
Mm,
different phases. But in terms of tips, one, I would say olive oil is good. Extra virgin olive oil. That's the best. I use that. Sea salt, Celtic salt, Himalayan salt. There's a new kind of salt I've started using now. It's called Red Mill, I think, from Utah.
oh,
So these kind of salts have got lots of trace minerals in them, so it's quite good. So I would tend to avoid salad dressings, got lots of processed stuff in there. So just try olive oil, sea salt, balsamic vinegar, maybe. You can do a very simple dressing with that. Uh, Avoid fried foods, of course. If you can grill, go for that.
barbecue is always
And
better.
keep it, yeah, and keep it simple, really. And the more color, the better, because different foods have got something called phytonutrients. They're beneficial plant compounds. And that's why eat a rainbow is important. So the more color, the more health, really. Yeah, so keep it simple, lots of color. And I would say meat 3 to 4 times a week, ideally. I know there's a kind of boar diet kind of movement going on, but I think maybe 3 to 4 times, and then the rest plants. But again, everyone's different, so listen to your body when you're making a recipe. If something's agree with you, then change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be cheeky. I'm just going to add another one onto this. What are three foods that are really good for your gut health?
Foods. Let's see. Avocados. Those are very good. They've
You
got
love some
monounsaturated
avocados.
fats. Those are really good. You knew you were going to say that. Red onions. Those are really good. They've got a compound called quercetin, it's phytonutrient. It's quite good for your gut health. And let's see the third one. I'll go with mushrooms. Those are good. Yeah, they've got
Yeah.
lots of beta glucans and they've got lots of fiber. Good for your microbiome.
My sister calls me childish for not liking mushrooms.
All right. Oh gosh, should try
she's,
them. It's
she's
so
like, you're an
good.
adult now. You should like. And the first thing I was like, I love avocados and I love red onions. I'm literally making, like I said, I was gonna cook dinner after this. I'm making some steak with some potatoes in the air fryer, and then some cabbage with some red onions as well. So yeah,
Mm.
got a little bit different colors and going on. Um, so yeah, I do enjoy cooking. I'm definitely hungry as well. So
Oh, you mentioned cabbage. I just remembered now. Fermented foods are so good. I should have said that. Your gut health. So you've got sauerkraut, which are kind of fermented cabbages. You can really go nerdy, like kimchi and tempeh and what's the other one? Yeah, so there are different kinds of fermented foods which are quite good for your microbiome. They alter the pH in the gut and help the microbiome flourish. Yeah, so fermented foods are good.
learning a lot, learning a lot. So Leke, before we end this conversation, I'm just going to ask you a question I ask all my guests. Say if there's a black man listening to this conversation,
Yeah.
how can something
Hmm.
that help them understand their gut health more?
Right. I would say avoid processed foods. They cause gut inflammation and have as many plants as you have and have fermented foods. And then you would feel better because it's going to influence all of your body.
Simple, simple and sweet, and simple foods. Um, a lot of what our ancestors probably would have been eating, and they
Yeah,
probably
eat
didn't have
like
to
your grandma or
worry.
granddad. Yeah.
Yeah, my grandma loves sadza and meat and veg, so I'm okay with that sort of diet, to be fair. um,
Absolutely.
so, like, where can people find you, and where can people hear about your stuff and work with you if they want to, do the optimal health program? Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. So go to guthealthmedic.com and just book a consultation, or you can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Gut Health Medic. I've also got a Facebook page, Gut Health Medic as well. And yeah, those are the platforms.
Yeah. And people, and your book anywhere? Amazon, you can
Oh
find
yeah, of
everything on
course.
it,
I forgot
can't
about
you?
that. My book's on Amazon. Um, How to Stay Ahead of Your Doctor, Influence Your Health. I think is one of the most comprehensive books out there in terms of empowering patients. It's got so many tips. People tell me all the time, "Oh, I can't get a doctor appointment to see my GP. I can't get my GP to do that, can do that." It's got all the information you need in that book, and you definitely be empowered 100% if you read this book. Something's going to improve in your life, I'm sure.
Bro. So, Leke, thank you for coming onto the podcast. I've really enjoyed this conversation that we've had, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much for having me.